Greetings, citizens of the internet. I'm Static Buzz, and this is going to be my review for Asterigos, Curse of the Stars. So we're going to start with an overview on what the game is. It's a game developed by Acme Game Studio and published by Tiny Build. And this is the about the game. Discover the long-forgotten secrets and hidden paths in the high fantasy world, featuring exhilarating battle encounters, interconnected maps full of places to explore, and immersive story where every choice matters. Play as Hilda, a brave young warrior from the North Wind Legion who embarks on a journey to the Cursed City in order to save her lost father. The gameplay elements inspired by Souls-like games alongside a lighter dynamic combat system create a fresh take on the modern action RPG genre, providing you with a harmonious difficulty and exploration battle. So it pretty much is that in a nutshell. It's an RPG, action RPG. You get basically a set of weapons that you get to switch between and build up the skill tree for those weapons. You increase in level by taking things out and getting experience that way. And if you do die, you go back to the last place that you saved, which is not saved, but the last. It's like a bonfire, but it's not a bonfire. It's like this portal-looking thing that I forget what they call it. And you go through the story. There's lots of quests, side quests, even though the side quests are not very apparent that they're there. And I will get into a lot of that stuff when it comes to the gameplay and whatnot. Is it fun and all that? I'll get into that as we go. But that's basically what it is. You're as you see on the screen, you're Hilda, and you're going to save your father, and you get to choose your play style based on the weapons you choose. And you're pretty much going to choose two. There's sword and shield, spear, hammer, some weird gloves that you can drop bombs and stuff with, and also have some medium range attacks. There's a staff, and I will get into all that when it comes to the gameplay. So that's the basic overview of the game, and let's get into it. The first category we're going to cover is story, and when I'm talking about story, I usually cover also the characters and if they're enjoyable or not enjoyable, and if the story is enjoyable to play through and whatnot. No spoilers here. You kind of get the gist from the overview of what the game's about. You're going to the Cursed City to save your father, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So is the story enjoyable, and does it make you feel like you're progressing well through it, and does the story drive you to continue the gameplay? That is kind of rough on this one, because the way that they do it is you have conversations with people, and you can select the things that you want to talk about, and you can bypass them altogether in most instances if you want. And then there's also a journal. I do say that I found the story interesting, and that I wanted to see where it was going to lead, because then you get to a certain point and there's twists. So I did enjoy the story as a whole. It wasn't something that I couldn't see coming, surprised me, and shook me to my core. No, nothing like that, but it's a very solid story. As for the characters, because I include the characters in this section, the characters are all pretty solid. Nobody that I felt like I was drawn to, and nothing that made me... Nobody that made me like, oh, that's my waifu. That's the main dude in the game and all that. Nothing like that. There were some enjoyable characters though that I wanted to see where their stories led. So there was that. So I would say, all in all, the characters were between serviceable and good. Next thing we're going to talk about is the interface, the UI, the GUI, all that good stuff. And I found this one to be pretty much what I would expect. There were some things that I did like about it though. So this is the first page that you have your abilities, so you can come here, you can do you get attribute points every time you level up, and sometimes when you do quests. Talent points, this is where you pick your skills, and each one of these, the constellation goes out from the middle, and each one of the ones that branches out is a different weapon type. I'm using the staff and the sword and shield right now on the build that I'm showing. You can see that this is probably a middle level character, and there's still a lot of room for growth. I could probably go into a third, maybe even a fourth tree later on. So it's pretty cool that you can swap those out if you want. This is setting your skills. You pretty much, when you unlock these on the constellation, they show up here, and then you can slot them in for the different buttons if you want here. And this is the one that I really like. This is the perks, and in the constellation there's going to be some stars that you have to select to get the ones past them. Like in most of the other games that are like this with constellations, you have to follow the line, so each one is like a prerequisite. This one though, if you pick one that has a perk that you don't like, you can deselect it so it's not active. This rejuvenation one, for instance, it says that my Stardust potions restore more attack, AP, not attack, AP, which is what you use for your skills, so action points, but the number of potions I have is less, so I can't carry as many. So I was messing around at the time I was recording this, and I wanted to see which was better, more potions or more AP from the potions. But you can deselect and reselect anyone you want, so I did like that. Here's your profile. Nothing extravagant. There's outfits. I don't have any extra ones. This is all your quick slot items. This is your trinkets. You can switch those out. Those are basically like your passive buffs. These are the two weapon types that you want, so these should correlate with the skills. There's also ways to wipe out your skills and start over if you wanted to try different weapons, so that's all good. Here's your inventory. I never really ever ran across a point in time where I was out of inventory space. It seems to expand as you go, and a lot of things stack, as you can see here. Some have a maximum stack, and other ones I'm not so sure about. You have your journal, so you know if you have quests in each areas and whatnot, main, side, all that good stuff. And archives are just some collectible items, documents you collect, and items and tutorials and game record and all that good stuff. So, like I said, for the most part, it's a pretty standard interface, but there was the perk part that I liked. I liked that they added the ability for you to disable a perk if it was something you didn't like or you wanted to test something else with it. Sound and music. And yeah, the sound is pretty much what you would expect. If you get a sword, it has a slashing sound. If you have a hammer, it's got a crunching sound. The spells all sound different. You know, you got the fire, the ice, the lightning, and the what was it? Ether, darkness. I can't remember what the purple one was, but they all had different sounds. And even like the ice one, when it would float through the air, you heard like crackling sounds as it struck things, you know, because it would go through them and keep going, and it would have like a crackling ice sound as it went through. So it was all pretty well thought out on the sound. The only issue I did have was at sometimes if I was close to, say, like a waterfall or something, and I was trying to hear somebody talk, sometimes the waterfall or that sound that was a little off in the distance would be so loud that I couldn't really hear what the person was saying. So I had to modify the volume inside the options so that I could hear the dialogue or whatever I was closest to better than the distance thing. As for the music, it's very fitting. It's got that Jason and the Argonauts, Clash of the Titans type feel to it. I can't think of any other ones that would make sense. God of War, it would probably work in that one as well. Music was really good. There wasn't any tracks that stood out. None of them really made me want to skip any of them or anything like that. And so they were all serviceable. They were all good.
Hurry up and find my weapons.
And that is sound and music. All right, visuals and graphics. It is.
All right, I've got them all back.
The best I could tell, it's a mix between a stylized and a.
Much easier.
How do I say this? Not AAA graphics, but really detailed graphics, nice and all that. So it is it's stylized, but it's also very pleasing to the eyes. Every area has its own look and feel as you move forward, and each one is done well. There was only a couple times that I ran across spots that certain textures would be grainy if not in the right resolution. I guess that's the best way that I can explain it. But for the most part, it looked good. Like what you see on the screen, that's pretty much what you see. Everything ran smooth. There wasn't really no hiccups or glitches or screen tearing or graphic anomalies. There was none of that going on. So that's pretty much the graphics side. Now for the visuals, they tout that there are, what was the exact number? 60 different enemies and encounter 22 bosses. And each one of the bosses is very unique. And each one of those 60 enemies are unique as well. I don't remember any of them that were like reskins that made me go, oh, they're just reusing that enemy and just changing the color of it. Even like with what you see on the screen, these little black characters here, I don't know what they are. They're kind of weird looking. They had different enemy types among them, and they all had different visuals to them. Like some would throw potions at you, and they had like kind of a hood on them. Other ones, like that one had the sickle looking weapon, and then there was another type that had another kind of weapon, and they looked a little different. So each one of them was unique in its own right. And as you get further and further in the game, some of the human enemies, they all kind of look similar, but they have different armors and whatnot on them. So like if you're going up against a city guard, for instance, you could tell it's a city guard. If you're going up against a bandit, you could tell it's a bandit. Now if the underlying character that they use for that are similar, I didn't really notice in that regard. Those type of enemies, pretty much the only thing that changed with them was their weapon type. They did have some casters and stuff with them, and they looked totally different than the guards. So like I said, I didn't really notice any reskins, so that was pretty good. As for the visuals overall, with like the spell casting and the effects that go on the screen, like what you're seeing right now, I thought they were all really clean, really good. The spell casting, which I got into later in the footage here, I'm only showing early game footage because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. This was actually demo footage here. Well, this is what was in the demo. It's not demo footage, it's full release footage, but it's the area that was the demo. Anyways, back to the visuals. All the UIs look very clean. All the characters have a distinct look to them. So when I look at the ones I need to talk to, I'm not going to spoil anything. I can tell which one I need to talk to because they have a distinct look. And none of them really look the same. Even there was like a hub area. All the characters in the hub area look different. Some of them really, really different, especially as you start getting more characters coming to the hub later on in the story. Then, yeah, they definitely get a different look. So When it comes to visuals and everything, like I said, it's stylized, but it's really very, very clean. The details there and whatnot, and you'll get an idea of a boss type monster here in a second when I get to it. Like I said, this is all stuff from the demo. This is the early area, so nothing you're gonna, miss. Like this guy here, he casts spells, and you can see that he has a staff, and he looks a little different. He looks almost purple compared to the black ones that the other ones of his species were. So yeah, like I said, everything looked good, and I really enjoyed the visuals, and that was pretty enjoyable for the most part throughout the whole game. And now we're on to gameplay. And what is the gameplay like? What's the gameplay loop? It's pretty much what you would expect. You get a quest from the hub. You go and do what they requested. And to do that, you're going to have to fight your way through enemies and figure out ways through the different parts of the city that you're going through. Be it a wooden, what do they call those, shanty town looking areas, or a mine, or there's a university later on, and then there's all kinds of different biomes, for the lack of better words. And when you first start, your objective is to get to the city. When you get to the city, you're given a quest. You go and you do that quest, and then you come back to the hub, and then you're given 3 quests that you have to do, and you can do them in any order, but you have to do all 3 of them to move on. And then after that, you're given 4 quests, and then you keep going through and getting more quests as you go to complete the whole story. And you go through, you beat the enemies. There's usually a boss at the end. There's mini bosses in the areas as well. Some of the areas have a lot more of those type of mini boss fights than others, but it goes along with kind of the story of the area. And then you get experience for doing these quests and killing these enemies. You use that to level up. When you get enough, it levels up automatically. You get attribute points. You put attribute points into your whatever you're working on for your build. If you're working on a strength build, a crit build, or I shouldn't say crit build, but yeah, it's kind of a crit build, crit/magic build, or there's stamina as well. You go, you do that, you collect items, you collect materials to increase your weapon damage and move them up. There's like levels 1, 2, plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, plus 4, blah blah blah, on and so on. There's areas like this that as you unlock things, you can actually burn those and not take damage, and it'll get rid of them for the remainder of the time. And there'll be hidden things like that right there on the left. That looks like a hidden area that if I had fire at the time, I could have burnt that and walked into a cave and maybe got another chest. Chests give you materials to increase your weapons abilities. Also, as you're leveling up, you get skill points. The skill points you get, they give you skill abilities. You can see one on my bar right there. If I hold the R button down, I can use that. It's like this couple sword slashes and then down with the hammer. And you unlock those as you go through the skill tree, the constellation. And that's kind of the progression. You go do quests, you level up, you upgrade your weapons, you go to new areas, do quests, come back to the hub, continue the story, and whatnot. It's pretty standard fare. It's enjoyable. It's not bad. There are some things that I think they could have improved on. I think that this might be a little bit of a spoiler, but I don't think it really is. You have to go through a certain amount of things to get the ability to teleport. So what you saw earlier with that portal looking thing, all you can do there is rest and save until you've done those 3 quests that I talked about that you're initially given, and then you can teleport after you beat those 3 quests. And it takes a good amount of time to get through those quests. So I think they could have moved that teleport ability up, and it would have made the game a little more enjoyable. There's also some areas that have less of those save points than others, and one in particular is the mines. You have one as you go into the mines, but as you're going through the mines, I didn't see any. And I got to the boss fight at the end and accidentally fell off the side because the boss moves throughout it. I fell off to the side and basically died like you would in any Souls-like game. And it put me all the way back there, and I had to run all the way back through. And some of these can be kind of hard to remember the path. They're not always straightforward in the way you get to where you need to go. There are no quest markers, so even if you pick up a side quest, or even the main quest for that matter, there are no markers anywhere so that you know where you're going. There is no map, so that's a pro and a con depending on what you like. I mean, if you're looking for something that you have to figure everything out and you have to remember everything, then you're going to enjoy this game. If you're somebody that likes to be guided a little bit, then you might be a little frustrated. I kind of enjoyed both of them at times. When I couldn't figure out where I needed to go, it was a little frustrating. And other times when I knew where I had to go, it was kind of rewarding because I felt like I had overcome a challenge. So yeah, it's kind of hard. Now the combat in general, I found it pretty enjoyable. There's difficulties. You can go from easy to, I think there's 4 difficulties: easy, normal, hard, and harder, or something like that. So if you want a challenge, you can crank it up. If you don't want a challenge, you can go down a little bit. Normal was challenging enough in the boss fights. The normal enemies weren't that challenging for the most part, unless you got ganged up on. I don't think I really died all that much through my playthrough, and I played on normal. So yeah, but the combat's pretty enjoyable. It's got the dodge, it's got the big moves and stuff. Those are always enjoyable. And I basically moved to a staff build, so I was casting a lot of spells and keeping at a distance, and I found that enjoyable. So you could probably find a weapon that you enjoy in this game, and each one has its own unique feel to it. So I would say experiment early on to figure out what you want to use, and it's not like you have to go and find that weapon. Once you get through the tutorial area, you should have all your weapons available to you to switch out. And then once you figure out what you like, you can upgrade that weapon and make it better. The downside of that is you don't find unique weapons, and there's no new weapons along the way. It's all just upgrading as you go. So they kind of missed out on that. On the loot side of things, when it comes to weapons and armor, there's really only trinkets. You get trinkets as you go through, so you can get better trinkets or ones that fit your playstyle a little better. That's really all there is when it comes to equipment, is choosing your weapons, choosing your trinkets, and then choosing what is in your quick use slots. So, but yeah, that's gameplay in a nutshell. There was some frustration there. There was some high points and low points. I did find it mostly enjoyable. So yeah. So now we come to the final score, and how the final score is determined is there's 5 different categories: story, the interface, sound and music, visuals and graphics, and gameplay. Each one of those can score 20 points. Totaling those 20 points together can reach up to 100, so this will be out of 100 score-wise. The story, which like I said earlier, also includes the characters, I gave a 17. And the reason why I gave it a 17, it was a very solid story, had enough twists and turns in it to keep my interest and make me want to play to see what was going on in certain aspects of the story. And also I found the characters to be either good to a little better than good. So, yep, that's why I gave it a 17. For the interface, I gave the interface a 17, and the reason why I gave it a 17 was It's pretty much what you would expect from a game like this, a Souls-like game, but it's a lot cleaner than a Souls game usually. And it had some menu options that I really liked, like the perk menu. So I gave it a 17. For sound and music, I gave that a 16. It was good, but just barely above what I would consider good. So 15 would be a good, 10 would be like an average. So I gave it a little bit above that because of some of the little added things like the crackling ice sound and stuff like that from the spells and those type of things. So I gave sound and music a 16. For visuals and graphics, I gave those an 18, mainly because everything is clean. It's kind of stylized, so it's not like over the top with the things that it does, but everything was clean. Everything was good. The interfaces were all clean and sharp. The different enemy types, there was a lot of them. Never really got old with those. The areas were all unique looking for the most part and interesting. So I gave visuals and graphics an 18. Gameplay, this is probably the hardest one for me because there were some things that really frustrated me with the design choices, and then other things I thought were really clean and everything. I kind of went between 16 and 19 and kind of ended up on 18 because I viewed the little quirks that I had as personal quirks. So keep that in mind when you take this into account. If you, like I said earlier, if you want the quest markers and you want to be guided, then this game might frustrate you a little bit. Is it still worth playing with that going on? Probably. If you don't like quest markers and you don't like being told where to go, no hand holding, then you will probably enjoy this game more than others, maybe just a little bit. So that is why I gave it an 18. So that would give it a final score of 86 out of 100. So I hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you guys want to see more of these, then hit that like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the format. It is the first one I've done with this format. I did a review many years ago. This is the first time I'm doing this format, so all the reviews will just get better from this point on. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to tweak the scoring. I like the way that it works out and giving the categories their own little weight. So until next video, take care. Bye-bye now. Static Buzz out.